Okay, so our next presentation is Pedestrian and Bicycle Infrastructure Network with John Beinhodge. And John, I'm going to let you introduce yourself since I don't have your bio.
Okay.
But
Okay,
anyway,
thank you.
take it away.
Yeah, that was my fault. A little laziness on my end. But my name's John Beinhodge. I'm from NCDOT's Bicycle Pedestrian Division. A little brief bio. I've been an urban planner for about 20 years, the last 11 with the Bicycle Pedestrian Division. And I bachelor's degree at University of Tennessee, Knoxville in urban studies and a master's of urban and regional planning at Virginia Tech, so about 20 years ago now. Again, I'm going to talk about the pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure network, and as I mentioned, I'm an urban planner, not a GIS professional, so it's not going to get really technical. But it's kind of more of a information presentation and to get you guys kind of aware of what we're doing, and hopefully you guys can kind of enhance our efforts that we've been undertaking. So let's see what we do. Okay, what is it? It's essentially is a statewide GIS inventory of existing and planned biking and walking facilities. Essentially a geodatabase of existing and proposed bike and pedestrian facilities. And proposed is what we view that as what is in a locally adopted bicycle or pedestrian plan or some other type of transportation type of plan. This few little examples of kind of the type of the data items that we're talking about that are included in the geodatabase. Just quick little pictures. I know everyone's kind of familiar, but this is kind of so we're kind of speaking the same language. These are kind of some of the primary types of facilities that we include in our geodatabase. Bike lanes, that's a footpath, a paved shoulder, more in like rural roadways. We have sidewalks, multi-use paths, off-road path, or shared use path type of facility. Kind of the middle on the right is a side path that parallels roadways, but it's essentially a multi-use path too. Mid-block crossing, and then the middle down there is shared lane marking or sharrows that you guys see on a lot of roadways now. Well, some roadways now. And then crosswalks down in the bottom corner. There are other facilities that we do have in our geodatabase, so those are some of the primary ones that are more familiar with. So, prior to the PBIN, this is kind of, there was no standard way to collect bike and pedestrian data. We were aware, and as we started collecting the data, we realized that there was really no consistency in the data. Some data came in shapefile format, some of it was actually in CAD formats. There was really inconsistencies of the quality of the data when it was collected, the attribute data. Some of it was more specific than others, so it was really a variety of things that were out there as we started looking at it. There was really no centralized place to store data. So some data may have been at the local level. We weren't aware of it. It was used for some particular project at that local level, and it was just sitting there essentially. So data out of date, creation data unknown. As we looked through it, we found that, I'll kind of get into this a little bit more, but there was really no metadata. I think of the first 90 data sets that we collected, only one of them had metadata, so it really wasn't organized well at all. And BikePed provides data through our Planning Grant Initiative program, which I'll talk about in the next slide, to Transportation Planning Branch within NCDOT. And the data we were providing them was really challenging for them to use it because it came in a lot of different formats. And then no standard terminology was kind of those facilities I showed you before in the slide. There were people kind of talk about those and use different terminology for those types of facilities for like a multi-use path. Some people call it a bike path, although we don't really recognize that term anymore. And so we're just trying to make sure we're all speaking the same language. This is kind of how it started. We had we have a Planning Grant Initiative program where we fund bicycle and pedestrian plans across the state. Right now it's over 170. And so we've had just going since 2004, so we've covered a lot of communities, and also we're doing regional bicycle plans as well. And in this effort, of this plan development process effort, we were collecting GIS data. However, as I mentioned before, we didn't have any standard way of requesting this data. We just said, give you your data after the plan is complete, which was existing and proposed bicycle and pedestrian data. So we were essentially collecting it, had it on CDD or DVD or thumb drive, and put it on our server, and it just kind of sat there, and it wasn't being used at all. So we got together and created a contract with NC State's ITRI, Institute for Transportation Research Education unit, and decided we want to do a geodatabase. So, and at the time of creating the geodatabase, we also at the same process, we were going out to solicit data. So we took data that was bullet down there, what we had within DOT, which was our Planning Grant Initiative program that I just mentioned on those maps. Took that data we had, and then it was 143 at the time when we started it, but now we're at 170 plus, but because it started about 3 or 4 years ago. And we also took CTPs, which was the Transportation Planning Branch, their bicycle pedestrian elements, and our regional bicycle plans. But then also we actively solicited data from around the state. We had a survey where we asked if anyone could provide us data, and if they're willing to provide us data, if they had data and willing to provide us data. And we also followed that up with phone calls and emails as well. And so we reached out to all 100 counties in the state, and all, at that time, 37 MPOs, RPOs, I think it's 39 now, and municipalities with greater than a 5,000 population. We kind of viewed that as a threshold where we may be able to obtain data. Once you get below 5,000, there may not be that GIS capability within some of those jurisdictions. So, and then also some other unique stakeholders too we reached out to. So we, at the same time we were soliciting, we were also upgrading the geodatabase, and the geodatabase was, we established nomenclature and structure and field and attribute specifications, and we really put a lot in it as far as a lot of field capabilities where you could populate it with a variety of different things. A lot of the data we were getting weren't able to populate all fields, but we kind of left it open to capture that data later on. You know, some new data, or if someone wanted to revise the data that they had provided us. So once we had the data in we had our geodatabase and we had the data, ITRI, we were working NC State again, they integrated the data into PBIN, and they did a lot of these processes. There were a lot of geoprocessing tasks, nothing too complicated, but it was more of just a lot of tedious exercises they had to undertake. Inspecting the data, editing, duplicate data evaluation. Sometimes we'd receive data that overlapped from different entities, and kind of evaluating maybe which one was more accurate or more up to date, or provided us more attribute information. We had to remove some of the shape files we received. We had to remove some of the fields because it didn't fit into ours, and we had to add fields to make sure it lined up with our geodatabase and those types of things. So. And again, consistent terminology. We established the terminology we wanted to use and had to make some modifications with the data we received. So, and to date, it's somewhere around over 280 data sets that we have received and added in and put into our geodatabase. This is not of much value, I realize now, but it's essentially a table that was when we were converting shapefile data and brought it up into our PBIN attribute table. So, but I'll move on from that. And I realize it says date warehouse, but I was too lazy to change it this morning. So, but it's data warehouse. And essentially the geodatabase has 6 feature classes: the pedestrian bicycle facility data, bicycle facility data, and shared use paths data. And this comes in both point and linear data sets. So, and you see those there. Aligned with this is a data catalog that's available online, and it's very detailed. It describes each field and kind of the typical attribute data that populates those fields. And you can see with that one, that's just an example. That's an EXST underscore FACIL. That's the field name, and then there's also the type, the text type, and the number of characters, and then those are kind of the attributes below it. And the next slide gets in this too. And again, this is online. Each feature data set has essentially a component element in the data catalog that addresses it. This is bike facilities linear, ped facilities linear, and shared use path linear. So a lot of good information that helps the guide when people are actually giving us data into our geodatabase. More specific items that are captured in the geodatabase, and this is the pedestrian facility data, and this is both existing and proposed for all of these. Well, not for all these items, but for like a facility type that would be existing and proposed material, et cetera. So this is a sidewalk, maybe a facility type or footpath. We have where we can capture what material the sidewalk is made out of. Is asphalt, concrete, et cetera. The buffer zone, the width of the sidewalk. If we have point features, we capture crosswalks, mid-blocks crossings, those types of things, pedestrian signals, and other little items. And again, our most populated fields are, of course, the most obvious one, facility types, and then there are also things like date of planned adoption, those types of things, and entity, those. But something like material is not captured that much at this time. Bike facility data, again, existing and proposed facility type, bike lane, paved shoulder, cycle tracks. We also capture, so we have a lot of that bike routes information, shared lane markings, which are sharrows. And we also have implementation, perhaps how the bike lane was installed. Was it a restriping project? Was it some type of reallocation road diet project? Those types of things. Bike lane width, et cetera. Point features, bike corral, like what you guys may have seen over on Hargett in front of Morning Times. We may have one in our system, so. Bike lockers, bike parking, and other types of bike-related point features. And then shared use paths, existing and proposed shared use paths, side paths, et cetera. Whether that side path, where that shared use path is asphalt, concrete, gravel, and et cetera. So, in addition to those 6 feature classes, we also have 3 other ones, which are the Mountains to Sea Trail, East Coast Greenway, and the Carolina Thread Trail. We were going to incorporate those into the other 6 feature data sets, but they had a lot of unique features about them and a unique attribute field data that we were going to kind of lose when we brought it into our geodatabase, so we kept those separate, but they are still a feature class within our geodatabase. So, but their own little data set. Metadata, we do have metadata tied to all these now under the geodatabase, and when we do solicit data or when we accept it, we require that metadata be incorporated with that, anything that we receive, and we follow whatever is the practice at the time with GIS standards and practices that DOT uses. So, the status map, this is 6 months ago, but you can kind of see what we have collected out of those 280 plus data sets. This is both existing and proposed. You can see in the a lot of the red is the shared use paths, blue pedestrian data, and green is bicycle data. The next one you can kind of see, or break this out by existing. We received a lot of data from, you see the urban areas, the blue being the sidewalks where there's more established sidewalk networks within the larger urban places and smaller ones too, much more so than the bicycle networks and the shared use path networks. A lot of the green you see for a bicycle, that's actually bicycle routes that go, across states, across county lines. So. And I should say the blue you saw there in the back, which I thought was, I didn't know what it was at first, that's actually footpaths in like some state parks on the west part of the state. So. And this is proposed facilities. As you see, you don't see as much blue anymore. You see a lot of the bicycle network that's really lacking in a lot of parts of the state. So, most everywhere in the state. So, but you see a lot of proposed facilities and plans that want these types of bike lanes, paved shoulder, shared use paths, and those types of things. A little tabular information on what we have collected. Again, sidewalks, over 10,000 miles of sidewalks in our database, existing, proposed. We have a lot of large number of shared use paths that are proposed. Some of those are across county lines, but a lot of them are in local jurisdictions as well. A lot of communities, that's the kind of, they want a separated facility for their people walking, people biking. It's a very in-demand type of facility now, and it's being recognized in a lot of the plans we're working on. And point data, you can see some existing features that we have collected. A lot of bike parking, which was good to see. And then a lot of more pedestrian types of things with the curb ramps and marked crosswalks. So. How data will be used by NCDOT. I won't get into this much, but the first there is evaluating performance. We have a statewide plan that gives us some guidance on how we're supposed to measure how we're doing as a state in providing and enhancing the biking and pedestrian network. And ideally, once we have when we get this PBIN database more robust, more comprehensive, then we will be able to compare archived versions by looking back a few years and seeing what the network looks like now compared to before. So seeing what system has been built out and what system has been planned. And there are analytical processes to examine relationships between the facility that's there or not there, and then what the usage is and how many people are walking and biking or not, and what crash levels are there. So. Also bring this into our regional bike plans. There's that state transportation improvement program project scoring when our division evaluates roadway improvement projects or bridge replacement projects. We look to see if there's a bike pedestrian need, and also other units do as well. And we view this tool as something kind of you go to first to see if there is anything out there, and if there's anything planned, where you may want to. If it's planned to have like a sidewalk in an area where a bridge is being replaced, maybe we'll know first to indicate that, maybe we should put a sidewalk on that bridge when it's being replaced, or at least space for a future one. I won't get into prioritization, maintenance, collaboration. Again, reducing redundancy and duplication of efforts is very significant here too. So. And how others use data, there are a lot of little bullets there, and a lot of them kind of relating to items I just mentioned. But I think overall it's looking at how a lot of the other modes with highways have their comprehensive, as we were just listening today about the center lines, et cetera, but have their database and their networks in their system. And so, but also with, the bus systems, the rail lines, the ferry and aviation, et cetera, they have all of these extensive data resources, and it's getting at that effort with the bike pedestrian field and starting somewhere to try to collect that facility data that's out there and put it all within a central location in order for us to do all these types of items that are listed here in this bulleted list. So, and again, I mentioned that it's not comprehensive, and it will never be as long as things are being built. We'll just continue to be catching up, but it's a very good baseline start, and we're still continuing to solicit data. We need to, I think, enhance our solicitation efforts and maybe design some more effective ones, but it is one thing we're going to keep pursuing. Another, I guess, point there is iteration variation on terminology, collection, and or storage. Some data lack specificity, but I think that's okay. We've received data, some of it a lot more comprehensive than others, but it is, it can always be revised later on or add more attribute field data to where something may be lacking. And then, I think I'm missing one there. In some places, complete network data of biking, walking facilities may be lacking or have gaps, overlap. Some data is created just for a specific project, a specific corridor, and it may not include the whole jurisdiction, which again, it's okay. We can receive anything and you can go back and add to that later. So, and then data has not been ground truth. We did not create any data. We just integrated it, manipulated, integrated, and put it into our geodatabase format with the fields that we thought were appropriate. So, if the data was something incorrect on the end of the locals providing it to us, or the MPOs, RPOs, then our data may be a little bit off there. So there may be some need to ground truth some of the data. Accessing the PBIN, it's on the Connect page, and there it is. So you can go there and read about it. You can download a bunch of documents, which are these. The PBIN geodatabase, and with metadata that we update, I think that about quarterly right now, but you can download the whole geodatabase. You can download a geodatabase template, which is a blank template that can be used for when someone to download to use it, to populate it, and then send to us so we can append it to our geodatabase. The data catalog that I mentioned earlier, and then the geospatial standards for planning grant communities that map all those planning grants that I just showed you. we have some standards that our consultants that do our plans have to follow with our geodatabase. And then this last bullet is NC terminology for active travel, which is this document to the right. And we realized, by the way, that we were not good at naming things because the PBIN, after we had it, we realized it was very clunky, but we were kind of stuck with it to go back and change. And now we realized after making this document called the North Carolina Terminology for Active Travel that that's very wordy and clunky as well. So, but we're kind of stuck with it too. So it should have just been called, not PBIN, some type of glossary. So, but this is essentially this glossary lines up with the data catalog and gives some people a visual and a just definition of what that facility that we're talking about when they want to start populating their geodatabase. So it has about 75 items throughout there, and it's a nice little document that's helpful for this purposes or for other ones outside. And it essentially establishes consistent terminology, so we're all talking about the same thing. Maps online. This is in progress. This is DOT's ArcGIS Online. We're working on a map. A planner was, and then they left, so it's still been sitting there like it is. But we want to kind of filter out some of the data in the geodatabase and put it up on the maps. And we've been in recent communication with Google, and they informed us that through a governmental submission of our PBIN data being just the existing data, that they could pull that into the Google Maps, into their bike layer. So it's something that we're going to pursue and have more discussions about that. And hopefully that we kind of envision if we can achieve that, then it will be kind of help to solicit data to add more to it. Because if locals see that it's on there, someone else's data is on there and their data is missing, they may want to incorporate their data into our geodatabase. Adding new data to the PBIN. Again, it's not too complicated. You go to the website from before, and this is the same one. You can download the blank the template. And again, you can either download it to any data you're creating new. You haven't created any data, and you're just wanting now to create your bike ped data. You can start from new, or you can take your shapefiles you already have and manipulate those in a way to where they line up with our geodatabase. And we can give some guidance on that, but I don't think it's that complicated. So. You can use the data catalog, as I mentioned before, and you fill in as many fields as possible. Everything doesn't have to be complete, but you wanted just some of the basic information. And so like I mentioned about the data modifications, and then we'll append the blank geodatabase. So, or we'll append the geodatabase once it's complete. That should say blank though. Adding data, accuracy, we do want it to be on which side of intersection. So sidewalk it's not right in the middle. Sidewalk will be on both sides. We have to be accurate to that point, or other types of facilities as well. Discrete data, each point, for example, would represent its own individual type of data item. So if there's a bike rack, but there are two separate bike racks, but they're close by, they still have to have their own discrete point. So they're their own discrete feature. And existing and proposed, it's either existing or proposed. You can't have both when you do your provide your information, which is pretty obvious. And adding data, if you already have data in the geodatabase and want to update it, you can easily just download the geodatabase, the full geodatabase, and extract what you need out of that, make any corrections with that, and again, fill in as many as you want, as much data as you can. As an example, this is Albemarle's PED plan, and they had sidewalk information. If they wanted to go back and populate the materials, they say all of our sidewalks are gravel, so we want to populate that. They can go back and easily do that. And the last 2 or 3 sides here are they're not on the PBIN, but it's just how they relate to it. And again, as I mentioned before, Bicycle Pedestrian is trying to, the data items out there are limited compared to the other transportation modes, and the PBIN, the Bicycle Pedestrian Facility data, is one data item. Another data item that we are working on, and there are relations between these data items, is our bike pedestrian crash data, and this is available for download on ArcGIS Online on DOT site. But we have had tabular data for bike pedestrian crashes for about the last, 15, 20 years, I guess. But since about 4 or 5 years ago, we've been geolocating bike and pedestrian crash data. So we now have online 2007 to 2014 crash data. And we entered a contract with HSRC on Chapel Hill later this spring to do 2015 and 16 that I hopefully will be available by the end of this year too. So we're catching up a little bit. But this is essentially you get a lot of information with this crash data too. The attribute data is very rich. You can look at crash types. You can look at this crash severity, date, and et cetera. And this is actually right here around the convention. Fortunately, there's not too many crashes that happened over the last from 2007 to 2014. And then also the third data item, in addition to those two, we're also looking at collecting count data for measuring the number of people walking, the number of people biking. So the other modes have, highway has their average annual daily traffic. Of course, bus can measure ridership, so can rail, et cetera, and aviation and ferry. So bike ped, it doesn't have that much out there. It's much more challenging to count people and bicyclists, but we are making an effort, and we have right now covered about installed counters. We're installing in that what's called project expansion. We hit a few in the Charlotte area, but are hitting a triangle this spring. And after that, we're going to broaden out to hit the whole state, the other 14, all the remaining 8 highway divisions. So again, it will be it's a statewide system where we help us by using continuous counters that, like I said, at a shared use path. You may have an infrared that goes across and counts people going by or biking and walking, and then inductive loops that are saw cut in the ground to count the bicyclists so you can distinguish between bikes and peds. That's just an example, but we're also doing on-road things on sidewalks and along bike lanes. And the idea is to supplement that with short duration counts and to have a count program where we can estimate traffic usage along to various points across the state. So just finally, I know it's 5 minutes. Again, the idea is having these 3 data items and how they relate to each other. We have an existing, or you have a bicycle pedestrian facility, and then how that relates to where you may have crashes or not have crashes, or you may have, it changes, if you have a facility or not have a facility, and how that relates to the number of people using it, and those types of things. So working all those together and trying to have our data items kind of, just like the other modes is what we're trying to get to, so. And that's all, so. Thank you. Yeah, any questions, sir? Sure.
I may have missed this one, so hard to hear. Does this include trails initiatives like the mountains and seas, some of the rails and local greenways?
Yes, all those. Well, if we had that information and when we solicited and collected it, we do have that, and it does have Mountain to Sea Trail, East Coast Greenway. It does have Mountain to Sea Trail and East Coast Greenway and other types of facilities in there, American Tobacco Trail, et cetera. Yes.
Have you seen any conclusions where ADA compliance and the building has made it compliant pedestrian lanes?
Have I seen, I'm sorry.
At the NCDOT level, have you seen any further movement from access board and ADA to get that standard?
No, I've heard a lot of people talk about it and how it's going to be a liabilities concern every day, but no, I have not heard about progress. Yeah, sorry. I couldn't hear that. For collecting the data, or to looking at the system and that type of thing, to know how to traverse it. Yes. Thank you for saying that. I know we haven't got to that point. Down the line, I think that it's an effort, we want to keep running with this and to keep building it. And so that may be an opportunity there, but no, not yet. So. Paul.
Just a quick follow-up to that. I know in NCDOT, we're actually trying to use it to do routing, and we've done that having crosswalks as a point of confusion to this scheme. So maybe that's sort of one of the improvements that the NCDOT might be looking for.
The crosswalks? Yeah. Okay.
Instead of making them a point, make them a linear feature, and then just tag them if that's not facility type as a crosswalk. If that would
Okay.
allow route.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. Thanks.
So we're using the data.
Okay.
It's very useful.
Good. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. I think that concludes our session.